Joining me now to discuss the so-called Trump accounts for children is our panel with Mike Leon and Tim Doescher. Mike is an NTD News contributor and the host of the podcast Can We Please Talk? And Tim is the executive director of Unleash Prosperity Now. Thank you both for being here. Mike, let's start with you. I mean, this is either a really great idea or a political move. Maybe you could weigh in on that. I mean, the inflation rebate checks just came out in New York. Governor Kathy Hochul's running for election. We know those kinds of things happen. But can this have a positive impact on the country and really benefit the youth? Or is this just handing out free money before the election?
Well, I love the way you landed the plane on the question, Kevin. Good to see you guys, first and foremost. Look, let's start at the high level. Like, this is a really big gift. I mean, $6 billion doesn't grow on trees. I know the Dell family is the 11th wealthiest family in the country with over $150 billion in net worth, but they didn't have to do this. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I do agree about the financial literacy part. In New York, there's 529 savings accounts, right, that you can create for your kids, like my two daughters have when I lived in New York. Obviously, I live in Florida now, where you can get other relatives and folks to save for the kids' college fund, and then obviously the same type of benefits that could be from this program that's going to be managing the money, the kids could benefit to take out when they're 18 to apply to college and things like that. So I think there's a huge financial literacy problem in this country. I know that firsthand. We have millions of Americans that are in credit card debt. That number is in the trillions in terms of how many people take out credit cards and think, hey, I don't got to pay it in 3 months, and I don't even know what this interest rate stands for. So I do agree with that. On your question about, is this a political move? I mean, of course, it's political in nature because it's happening with the president standing behind Speaker Johnson, the Treasury Secretary, and they're all touting this move. So there's a political angle to it and what we're doing once the big, beautiful bill goes into effect in 27. So, yeah, there's a political undertone in anything in life. But I think we have to kind of look at the gift at its face value in terms of the amount and in terms of what its goals and aims are, which is what I agree about the financial literacy part in this country that is severely lacking.
Well, let's build on what you're saying, Mike. Let's turn to you, Tim. I mean, we heard what the Treasury Secretary was talking about with these philanthropists now pitching in. What does it suggest that the Dell family is pledging this $6 billion gift for these accounts? I mean, is Trump setting up new avenues for those who are more fortunate to be benevolent to others?
Yeah, I think it's always been the barrier of entry is opening the account. One of the greatest gifts that you can do for somebody is to get them started. Not just give them, a stimulus check or some sort of payment, but to actually set them up for future success with tax benefits. So when you do reach that age, Mike was talking about it. This isn't just about education at the, when you turn 18. If somebody is saying, look, I don't want to go to college. If they have, I guess if they don't even touch, $250, a 7% return, that's about $25,000. With no additional investment waiting for them. They could start a business with that. They could do something with that money other than go to a four-year institution and get super in debt. This is shifting the culture in America away from let's just trust the government that we pay our taxes and something's going to be waiting for us to we're going to take this into our family's hand. Not only are we going to accept the $250 or the $1,000 that the Trump bucks are going to give, but we're also going to put $50 or our employer is going to contribute to this. So maybe they can have $500,000. Maybe they can have $1 million when they reach a certain age to really make something of it. It really is an incredible shift in culture, and I think it's well due in America.
Tim, that's really fascinating. Let's expand on this concept because I have the greatest hope for the people who actually have these bonds. But what's to say that some guy who's slinging a sledgehammer isn't paying for some wealthy person's kid just to have a big party when they turn 18? So, Mike, who's paying for these accounts?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, if I had the answer to that, we wouldn't be on this panel right now. But I think we can go back to something that Tim said there about the gift and the contribution and the shift of the culture mindset, right, Kev? Like, I do think that there was always a shift to like go to a 4-year college, but then you get yourself in debt. And I think this program and the way it's giving people that head start in terms of opening that program and then getting what I think is the biggest part of this, the component that Tim touched on, the corporations. I mean, Trump said in a statement yesterday that he's going to try to get more wealthy donors or more people that are CEOs of companies to invest in this program. That's a huge thing. Employer contribution for people, anybody out there that's ever applied to a job on LinkedIn, and then you go through the interview process and you ask them what's their contribution and matching to your 401k and things like that. For those companies that are benefits and over employees so that they can't have that money to put aside to save for their families, getting these companies to start to put into these accounts, Kevin, would go a long way in terms of, again, growing and really people up that are working, the middle class, let's call it for lack of a better term, and under, that are working these jobs at these companies that see no end in sight, no matter how much little money they put aside from this. So I think in terms of who's going to be paying for this, obviously you start with that $6 billion spread out across the different people that qualify. By the way, there's parameters to qualifying for this. It doesn't go to everybody. So I would encourage people to look that up first and foremost. But also getting these corporations to kind of chip in on this and start doing matching, I think is a huge part and a huge step up.
Yeah, those contributions are very important to look at. Now, Tim, back to what you were saying about these tax benefits. What are they and how do they work?
Well, first of all, I don't want to go back to your initial point. I mean, if I have an IRA, I'm limited in what I can do with it. If I want to take money out of it, of course I can take money out of it, but I'm going to pay a massive penalty in order to do that. So look, you can't control everybody. That's not the idea. The idea is to not only shift that culture of you are an owner in this great society, but now it's encouraging parents to, like Mike was talking about, financial literacy, saying this is compound interest. Ben Franklin said it's the greatest force in the universe is compound interest. That is a bipartisan issue. There's no question about it. And raising a child to say, this is your account, you own this, take good care of it, because when you're 18, you can either use it to start a business, you can use it to go to school, or you can roll it into a 401k and really start to save it so you can become a millionaire when you retire. So that's the culture shift. But in terms of the tax benefits that you have with this it's going to function a lot like an IRA, where it's pre-tax. You can put it in up to, like you said, about $5,000 a year, which I think the IRA is currently $7,000 a year. But it's regardless, it's going to start with that ability to say, this is tax-free money, I don't have to worry about it. It's going to compound with that, and that's good. And then that's going to couple itself with the one big beautiful bill where the withholding now is increased, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. This really has become a middle-class tax cut, tax benefit, and now it's just kind of adding this with the Dell donation as well as the Trump bucks to the folks in the middle class. It's a really big win.
Very interesting. Now, we've talked about the culture. We talked about the financial aspect. Mike, let's talk big picture. President Trump touted the Doge dividend. Now he's talking about the tariff rebates that may come next year, these baby bonds that they're called. Just looking at Trump's administration as a whole, what's the main thrust that he's trying to do here with these Trump accounts?
Well, you said the political angle, Kevin, so let me touch on that political angle. I think right now the president is putting out a bunch of different, and I have no better term, so don't take the connotation this way, fires, right? We've got what's happening on the foreign affairs stage with the wars happening in Ukraine and Gaza and the ceasefires there. We have what just happened yesterday with the cabinet meeting in terms of getting asked about these boats that are being blown up in the Caribbean waters and the different orders and the misinformation, sometimes disinformation that's coming out. So I think there's a bunch of different things that are happening. So I think the timing of it, everybody could give a little to what you said at the beginning, Kevin, about, hey, what's the political angle in this? All of a sudden, we're rolling out a donation. But I do think to what Tim was saying before about the middle class. Look, Kamala Harris during the campaign, Tim knows this, Kev, you know this, she announced something right after Trump had announced it, and that was that tax on tips. If you remember, she was in Nevada copying President Trump's plan. I'm not, I'm not a Trump guy, but the fact that she was copying some of those things spoke to the fact that she knew there was an issue with the middle class and with building the middle class and doing programs like this that would help workers lift them up a little bit more. So I think the timing of it, again, on the political side of this, because of what just happened yesterday with the cabinet stuff and Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt press conference on Monday and the recent Pentagon shift with the new reporters, I think the administration is trying to feel a bunch of different things. This happened to be planned at this time, but the program does have a good intention. And like I said, I'm behind the financial literacy part of this, the rollout part of this, because I know in Black and brown communities, as somebody who's in them, there is a huge missing sector there in terms of like, yo, how are you saving that? Like, what are you applying this for? You know that's tax. You know you have to pay this back within 30, 60 days. This is what APR means. This is what that means. And I think that is what the program is trying to tackle and help grow. And just because it happens to be President Trump, I think it doesn't matter who is the president that's doing this program. I think there's good behind it.
Thanks for that broad view, Mike. Tim, let's look at the design about these, the nuts and bolts. These are professionally managed and they're leveraging diversified index funds. They can be taken out when the kid turns 18. Now, does that give a good balance of growth with some guardrails, or is it a barrier that blunts the impact?
Well, I think that's going to have to, we're going to have to wait and see exactly what the accounts look like. It will be managed from a federal perspective. That gives me a little pause for sure. But if it's a market account, I think that we're in a safe position. As we've talked about before in the past, look, the stock market has, averaged since the very start about a 7%. That's a conservative estimate, by the way, a conservative average, by the way, 7% return on investment. I can't think of a savings account. I can't think of a Social Security program, a government program that has returned such an incredible investment. And that's because America has prioritized the private sector. It has prioritized that we are going to rely on our innovators and our business owners to grow this country, to grow that pie, to grow that pot and wealth. And I think that's exactly what a lot of people on the left criticize Trump for. Is like, oh, these are tax cuts for the billionaires and the very rich people. Well, you start to see now that the ins and outs of the One Big Beautiful Bill, the ins and outs of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, yeah, you lowered the corporate tax rate. But look at the pay that has come in. Look at the real median household income that has increased in this country since Trump took office. Just in January, we're up $1,200 for average families. Wage growth is strong. This is a big deal because we are prioritizing now taxing less, regulating less, making sure the price of oil comes down. So then you can have $50 a month to put in these accounts for your kids that have been started by the president. This really has been an incredible schooling in a rising tide that lifts all boats when you cut taxes and when you lower regulation and that burden. The cost is felt by you and me and Mike, and I think for the rest of the American people, and we're seeing that.
Excellent conversation. And I will add, it's the Harvard Business Review that wrote entrepreneurially imperative, meaning, you got to have people running their own businesses to preserve that American way of life. And it used to be 70% of Americans that had it. That number's plummeted. So hopefully this can help. Mike, Leon, and Tim Doescher, thank you guys both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.